Hey folks, welcome to week 15 of Intro to Digital Media Design. This is our very last full week of the semester. Can you believe it? It's been a long and strange semester, my friends. Anywho, we are going to wrap it up this week with our last media analysis, and you guys are going to be finishing up your final version of your semester-long project, which is, of course, your wonderful title sequence, and getting that turned in for next week, which is our week 16 finals week. All right, so let's go over the syllabus and see what we're doing. Okay, so this week is week 15. Normally we would be meeting on May 4th, 6th, and 8th. And so the main thing this week is we're going to do our fourth and final media analysis, which is all about design, specifically graphic design. Of course, design can encompass a whole variety of areas, including architectural design, fashion design, interior design, etc. But here we are talking about graphic design. So we are obviously not working in small groups anymore. We are working individually. However, if you want to buddy up virtually with somebody and work on the same piece of design, you are still welcome to do that. That is fine with me. And you guys are going to deconstruct, analyze, and document a given piece of design over the course of the week, just like we normally would be, and it is due on Friday. Now, before we get into doing the design analysis, you're going to hop on to announcements, and there's a video to watch. So if you go over here to Canvas and then go over to announcements, you will see that there's an announcement that just popped up. It says, watch in advance of our final media analysis design. And you go here, and you will find this video here, which can also be found out on YouTube. This goes over in a very short 4-minute video the basics of what graphic design is. The best definition I've ever heard of graphic design is the marriage between typography and image to convey a message to a mostly unknown audience. And that's basically what it is. You take some typography and some graphics and some images and you put them together to convey a message as a form of visual communication. Now, that's way overly simplistic, and this video will get into some more detail, and you can certainly watch that and check it out. But you don't have to be super familiar with what graphic design is to be able to do this analysis. This video will give you a little primer, and you can certainly go from there. Now, let's take a look at the actual analysis, which can be found in our projects folder, right? And so this here, our last media analysis design. So you're going to choose one of the following works of design below and look closely at it once, right? And then take another closer look at it and really try to look at all the details and write down as many notes as you can about it. Everything from choices of color to use of typography to shapes. Is there photography? Is there not photography? Is there illustration? Is it graphic related? Etc., etc. Try to think about as many different details about design as you can. And then you can, again, discuss this with other people in the class. If you're working on the same piece of design, certainly do that to sort of get some ideas together. That would be very helpful in sort of helping you work out your thoughts about this. And then you're going to answer these questions. And like our other media analysis, they are broken down into sections. Obviously, the sections here are different than on the previous pieces of design. Here we have structure and intent, regular old intent, typography, color, and imagery. So be sure to answer all of these thoroughly. You can simply turn in a Word document with all of your answers to each of these questions, or if you want to get some extra credit, certainly build it out into a PowerPoint or some sort of visual presentation that can really go over all the details. Okay, moving on. Let's take a look at the actual pieces of design. At the bottom of this, of course, is the list that we are working from. And like all our media analysis before this, we start out with older works at the top, and we get newer and newer as we go down. So we start in 1969 with a poster by Muriel Cooper, and we get into some work by Paul Rand, Michael Barut, Chip Kidd, Paula Scheer, Stefan Sagmeister, David Carson, Kate Morose, and Herb Lublin. If you know anything about graphic design, you may have heard about some of these people. They are generally famous, well-regarded graphic designers, but if you've never heard of them, that's fine too. All right, let's take a look at the work. So first of all, the Bauhaus poster, done in 1969 by Muriel Cooper. That is this one here. Now, the Bauhaus was a German art and design school that existed in the late 1900s into the early 1900s through the beginning of the war and was actually shut down by the Nazis because they did not like the sort of free thinking that was going on in the Bauhaus. But lots of things are referred to with regard to the Bauhaus. There's a Bauhaus style of design, there is Bauhaus typography, and of course the art school itself is known as the Bauhaus. It was started by a gentleman named Walter Gropius, who, if you look closely here, you can see his picture. So this poster is about the Bauhaus, and if we zoom in here, you can see that, well, there's Walter Gropius right there, and there's a whole bunch of other famous art and design professors who were involved in the school as well as some of their work. And then this here is the graphic for the text. So check that out. That is one possibility. All right, next we have the IBM poster done in 1981 by Paul Rand. Now you're probably thinking, wait a minute, I know what IBM is, but it's spelt differently. Yes, of course. So this here is the IBM logo, IBM being the computer company, but it's done using sort of phonetic graphics. So instead of the letter I, we have an eyeball. Instead of the letter B, we have a B, as in a bumblebee. And the M is still the same M that appears in the IBM logo. Most of these pieces are definitely worth doing some further research on your own to sort of find out what the background story is about them. So not only get your first impressions based on your visual analysis, but also learn a little bit about how these came to be and who these particular designers were. Paul Rand is a very famous graphic designer. Okay, the next one is Inner City Infill, done by Michael Barut in 1984. So this here is that piece, Inner City Infill. This is a typographically heavy piece. You can see that there's a small photograph in the lower right corner, but the majority of it is all typography. So this here is a pretty stark looking piece, a lot of black and white, red as well. It's really just a 3-color piece, so that is another option. Okay, next in line is the Jurassic Park book cover design done in 1990 by Chip Kidd. Chip Kidd is a New York-based publication designer, and he actually designed the first book cover for the original novel of Jurassic Park. Long before it was a movie, Michael Crichton wrote the novel, and Chip Kidd was hired to design the book cover. Chip Kidd later went on to design the logo for the movie as well as other Jurassic Park related graphics and book covers and posters and whatnot. So he's pretty closely associated with the property. Chip Kidd, of course, has done a million other things. He's also a big comic book fan, and so has done a bunch of graphic design in the comic book space as well. Chip Kidd's kind of a character too. If you find his talks on YouTube, he's actually a lot of fun to listen to. Okay, next in line, we have The Diva is Dismissed by Paula Scher, done in 1994, which was the year I graduated college, actually. So this here is Paula Scher's piece, called The Diva is Dismissed. This is a piece of silkscreen. It's a silk-screened poster using a monoprint of a photograph, meaning it's all done in one color separation. Again, a lot of typography, but the image is definitely a lot more prominent here. And a lot of these I've chosen are either poster design or book cover design because while a lot of graphic design takes place in what you would call a multi-page environment like book design, magazine design, brochure design, for our purposes in a visual analysis it's easier to look at single page or flat image design. And so posters and whatnot sort of lend themselves to that. Okay, next we have another poster. This is a Lou Reed poster by Stefan Sagmeister from 1996, which was actually the year I got married. Wow, these all tie in nicely. Now, you may know that Lou Reed is sort of a famous singer from the 60s and 70s. He was in a couple of famous bands, but him by himself is very famous. He has a very particular vocal style. If you're unfamiliar with Lou Reed, certainly look him up. He's almost more of a sort of a musical poet than he is a real singer. And when I say real singer, I guess I mean he's not super melodic. He's definitely more of a spoken word artist. But anyway, check him out, see if you like his work. But this is a poster by Stefan Sagmeister of Lou Reed. This is hand-scrawled typography. Not all typography is typeset. A lot of it's done by hand, which is we can see here, and we'll see more of that in a little bit. And so this here is a monochromatic photograph of Lou Reed with the typography over it. All right, while we're talking about music and musicians, we'll move down to this piece for Nine Inch Nails by David Carson. Now, David Carson is sort of known as being a grunge graphic designer. Grunge, of course, was a music movement in the 90s. Nine Inch Nails was part of that, although Nine Inch Nails is more sort of techno grunge. Straight grunge is more like Pearl Jam and Nirvana. But anyway, David Carson was hired to do pretty much all of Nine Inch Nails' early album covers, poster work, booklets, etc. This here is it's a poster and was also, I believe, the cover of a booklet. But you can check out their album covers as well. David Carson did the work on that too. David Carson basically is known for his sort of rough and aggressive typography, where it looks as if the type was almost sort of set on fire and then put back out again. He's really an interesting guy too. You should look up some of his talks. He's a very different personality than Chip Kidd, but he's also super interesting. Okay, so there's that piece, and then our second to last one here is just plainly called Typography by Kate Morose. The polar opposite of David Carson, who's kind of a dour, grungy dude. Kate Morose is really sort of a sunny, upbeat person, and she does a lot of hand typography as well, similar to what we saw in the Lou Reed piece, except that, as you can see by her choice of color palette, her stuff is really super upbeat and colorful and fun. She's a really great designer who does this really almost kind of childlike, whimsical work. So certainly check out more of her work if you're interested, but some pretty great stuff. Okay, and then last but not least is a poster entitled Beards by Herb Lubalin. Now, Herb Lubalin is sort of a master typographer and did a lot of really fancy interconnected typography that also served as illustrative typography. So this here is a good example of that. This Beards poster uses sort of a duo print here of the face, and then the actual person's beard is done in typography. Okay, so those are your pieces to review. Pick your favorite, whichever one you like best, and do a full, thoughtful analysis of it. They are hopefully a nice selection from over the years, spanning a good couple of decades. Okay, so back to what we're doing. So you've got your media analysis this week. Remember, again, it is due on Friday on the 8th. Make sure that has been uploaded to Canvas on the 8th for final review. Meanwhile, based on the feedback that you got on your drafts of your title sequences for your final, you should be finishing up and fine-tuning your final, your semester project. So remember, before you call it complete, be sure to review the requirements under step 4 for the semester project. Make sure you are covering all the required bases and you are actually making a title sequence, not a teaser trailer. They're very different. If you're unclear what that is, go back and look at the many examples that we posted on Canvas, okay? Now, next week is week 16. It's not a full week. It is really just finals week. Normally, we would have met for one day during this week just to sort of do our final presentations. Now, since we're working online, you guys are just going to turn in your final title sequence, and that is going to be due next week on Wednesday the 13th. No, I take that back. I'm sorry. It's actually due on the 11th by 9 a.m. So get that turned in on the 11th, which is Monday the 11th, so that I'll have time to grade all the finals and get the grades in by the end of next week. If you have any questions, concerns, thoughts, need any feedback about anything else, or just want to chat, be sure to contact me. Check out the online office hours. Those are still available for sure. We will have one more video lecture next week before we wrap this semester up. All right, hope you guys are all doing well, and I'll talk to you soon.